everyone, my name is Amber, welcome to my channel. This is my April wrap up. If you keep seeing the lighting change in this video, it's because I'm holding my ring light. I'm just not set up today to do this, but I do need to get this wrap up recorded and edited quite soon because I'm busy this weekend. Anyway, you don't need to know all of that. Let's just get into the books because that's the easiest thing to do. I'm just counting how many books that I read in April, and the total was 19. Things going well, I believe. Don't know the page count, but my average rating was 3.76. That's a really good average for me. As long as it's close to 4, I am happy. Above 3.5, also really good. Anything below that, I start to get a bit sad about my reading. So let's get into the books. I'm going to try not to waffle on too much because honestly I don't want to spend loads of time editing this video, but like I said, I read 19 books in April, so I do have quite a few to talk about. First of all, I finished off the Giant Days series, so I read volumes 8 through to 14. So I completely marathoned those at the start of the month because I was really struggling to read anything that wasn't a graphic novel. I think I was still in a little bit of a reading slump from March, and I gave myself way too many tasks to do, or challenges, or, you know, reading lists to do in April, and all I wanted to do was finish off the Giant Days series, so that's what I did. In case you don't know, Giant Days is a graphic novel series about a group of university students. There are 3 women who have just started university, so they're 18, and it kind of follows them on their journey throughout the 3 years that they're there and all the trouble and drama that they get into. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. Sorry about the light. I love this series. I gave every single book in this series 4 stars, so I would highly recommend it. I did get them from the library at the time, but I think I'm going to slowly collect them as and when they go on sale because I would like to own my own copies and read through them again because they are really fun to reread. Then I caught up with the Plated Prisoner series, I think it's called. I read Gleam and Glow, which were books 3 and 4. I think that's correct. This is a series about a woman who is being held captive by King Midas, who has the ability to turn things into gold, and this woman is actually golden as well. It is thought that King Midas used his powers on her and half turned her into gold, but she's still able to act as a normal human and not just a golden statue. I'm actually thinking about recapping this entire series on YouTube because I obviously run the website Recaptains, and I do recaps in written form, but I'm thinking maybe some sort of video format would be fun as well. Let me know if you'd be interested in that, and I can definitely start with this series because I think the final book is coming out at the end of the year. So in the first book in this series, going back, the main character is in love with King Midas. She is like his favourite of all of his women, but she is a prisoner. At the beginning of the story, he has some sort of task that takes him away from her into another kingdom, which means they're separated, and then she has to go on a journey to get to him, to the other kingdom. And that's all I want to say because otherwise I will end up spoiling the entire book because the first book was way too boring. There wasn't really much going on. But in terms of books 3 and 4, I gave book 3 3 stars, so the series had been gradually getting better, and then I gave book 4 2 stars, so it went downhill again because in book 4 nothing happened. It was so boring. The main character was pretty much in a coma for most of the book. It was so dull, and the author tried to introduce another point of view which should have been more interesting, but it really wasn't. So yeah, I'm not loving this series, but I kind of want to see how it ends, so I'm carrying on with it for now, I suppose. I should have put these books in front of me in some sort of order, but I didn't. I then finished my reread of Poison Study, which is a fantasy YA series. This is the first book in that series by Maria V. Snyder. I read this first in 2010 or 2011, and I loved it back then, but I didn't love it this time around. I've rated it 4 stars because back in the day I think I gave this 5, but now I would probably give it a 3. But I'm very aware that I'm not the target audience for this anymore, even though this does feel like older YA. So this is about a woman who is about to be executed for crime, but she is offered the position as the king's poison tester, or the commander's poison tester. So she'll have to taste his food and check for poisons. She accepts this because obviously she doesn't want to be executed, and the first half of the book is her training to be a taster of poisons, so she's able to identify them. She keeps getting into various situations where she almost dies, and the captain of the guard, or whatever he is really hot and she falls for him. So I did enjoy this, but it definitely wasn't as good as I remembered, and I do want to carry on with my reread, but I needed a break, so I didn't pick up the rest of this trilogy in April like I originally wanted to. I think I just felt a bit disconnected, and there was not enough plot happening throughout the book. I mean, there was some stuff, but I think my issue was that I already knew how it was going to end, so the intrigue wasn't really there for me. So unfortunately didn't love it as much as I did before, but it's still a good book. And then I decided to, well, I didn't decide, I got into a massive reading slump and I could only marathon the entirety of Lore Olympus. So I read what is technically volumes 4 and 5 because they're being published later this year, and then I continued reading everything that was online, so I'm now entirely caught up. So technically I read more than 19 books, I suppose. I just don't know how to quantify Lore Olympus, really, because it's also not on Goodreads. I'm really enjoying this graphic novel series. It has its ups and downs, but I'm very much enjoying it. I don't really know what else to say about it at this point. I gave both volumes 4 and 5 4 stars, and overall it's probably a 4-star series so far. Oh, I've missed out a book. This wrap up is a mess, I'm sorry. I finished A Prayer for the Crown Shy, which was on my list of series, I think, to finish this year. If it wasn't, it should have been. This is the sequel to A Psalm for the Wild Bill, and the final book in the Monk and Robot duology, I think. And this follows a tea monk called Dex, and a robot called Moscat, and they sort of just journey through the land together and discuss things. There's really not much plot to it, and that's okay. So I gave this, well, I didn't give it anything because I haven't written it down, but I'd probably give this 3 stars. I preferred the first one in this series, but I'm glad that I finally picked this up and I finished it off. Then I read The Writing Retreat, which was a weird book. I gave this one 3 stars. It wasn't what I was expecting at all. What I thought this was going to be was a really fun thriller set on a writing retreat. And the main characters start dying off one by one, but that's not really what happened. This is about a main character whose name I've forgotten, who does get invited to a writing retreat, and so does her ex-best friend slash rival. And they've got some history together. She's not spoken to this best friend in ages because something what she perceived to be quite bad happened, and they had a falling out. And they get invited to this writing retreat, and the host of the writing retreat is a best-selling author. And then things are not necessarily as they seem, and that's all I'm going to say, because this, like I said, took a turn. It wasn't really them being picked off one by one and being murdered. It was more complicated than that, I suppose. There was other stuff going on. There was potentially a supernatural element in the beginning as well. So yeah, interesting, unexpected, but not the best book I've read all month, and definitely not the best story. I'm going to forget about this soon after having finished it. A load of people have given this 5 stars, and I really don't understand how. I didn't really feel like the isolation, thriller, mystery vibe that I normally get with these kinds of books. So yeah, did not love this one, and I don't know why the release was so hyped. The publisher must have done a really good job. And then I read another graphic novel, and that was, it's really hard with one hand, Lock and Key, The Golden Age, which is a prequel story to the normal Lock and Key novels. I got this one from the library. I gave it 4 stars because I really enjoy the Key House and this family. Although if I wasn't so connected to the original series, if I didn't love it so much, I probably wouldn't have given this 4. I probably would have given it more of a 3, because this has a Sandman tie-in with Neil Gaiman, and that was the story that I liked the least. I only realised halfway through that it was like a Neil Gaiman crossover, and I really don't like Neil Gaiman, and I wasn't liking the story up until I realised, and then I realised that I'm probably not liking it because it's an author that I don't typically enjoy. I don't really know if Neil Gaiman had anything to do with this, or if Joe Hill just kind of went and did his own thing and connected it himself with Neil Gaiman's permission, obviously. But either way, it was my least favourite and I didn't love it, but some of this was very, very emotional, so I would highly recommend reading this if you're a fan of Lock and Key. I got this from the library, like I said, so I might buy myself my own copy if the price goes down, but currently it's £20. I don't really want to pay that much for this book. I then read The Daughters of Jaa, which I was meant to be buddy reading with Justine, but I think I just carried on without her. This is an adult fantasy book based on Egyptian culture, and the main characters in this are weavers, which means they have like elemental powers. They're basically like earth and water benders. One of the main characters, Georgina, works at a bookshop, and she is quite poor, and she is in love with this guy. The other character, Nihal, is a water weaver, and she's super rich, and she is forced into an arranged marriage so that her parents can get some more money because they're going into debt. They're really bad at managing their riches. Nihal is betrothed or forced to be married to Georgina's lover, and that's kind of the main way that they're connected, through this guy. This book actually focuses heavily on women's suffrage. There's a main character in this called Malak, who is leading a group of women called the Daughters of Jaa, who are fighting for the right to vote and just more rights for women generally. I really enjoyed that part, the political side of it, but I do wish that there was more focused on the elemental powers. I feel like this was lacking a little bit, and I also really didn't like the main character, Nihal. She was very much like a spoiled brat. She had a lot of power because she was rich, despite being a woman, and she knew that she had a lot of power, and she would kind of throw herself into situations very aggressively and didn't acknowledge that she was in a place of privilege, and she thought she could get her own way all the time, even though other characters were telling her to like back off and calm down, and she just wasn't listening. And I thought maybe there was going to be some character progression, and maybe there will in the sequel, but that didn't happen in this one, and she just annoyed me the entire way through. I really liked Georgina though. I thought she was very interesting, and I did enjoy the elemental powers part, but I wish they were a bigger part of the plot. So I gave this one 3.5 stars, and I will be reading the sequel, but I might get it from the library. Then I read Red Dirt Road, which is an Australian crime book. It's about a detective who goes into the outback to investigate a couple of murders that have happened in this small town of about 50 people. And she's obviously seen as an outsider, she doesn't belong there, and she has to sort of get to know the locals and figure out what happened to these people who have been murdered and just put on display, basically. Their bodies were put on display. This was okay, I gave it 3 stars. I really don't have anything to say about this one. It was all right, and the main character, she is disabled. I believe she has a plastic kneecap, but that's only mentioned once right at the beginning of the book, and then it's not really brought up again ever. So I thought that was a bit of an odd choice to mention that and then not say anything again later. And then the big reveal at the end that often happens with crime novels is when the main character explains to the perpetrator that they figured out what happened and this is how they figured it out, and they go through the entire like thought process, and that's fine. But in this case the main character did that for several chapters, and it was just going on and on and on about how clever she was and all these things that she figured out and how many ways the perpetrator had slipped up. So yeah, it started to drag a bit. It wasn't very fast paced towards the end, so I only gave it 3 stars. I then read The Lives of the Ajongo, which is a short story. It's a tall novella. I think it's about 90 pages in print, but I read the ebook and I really enjoyed this one. This is a fantasy book, and I do feel actually that this could have been a longer novel, like a full-length novel, because there was so much packed in there. So this is about a main character whose name I can't remember, who is sent into the desert to go and find water for his mother in order for her to be saved, because the city that he lives in has no water. Things come to light while he is in the desert trying to save his mum. It turns out he may not have been told the whole truth. So really enjoyed this. I love the fantasy element, but I do feel like I said, it could have been a longer full-length novel because there was so much in here that the author was trying to cover. There will be a sequel to this one as well, and I'm really looking forward to reading that. So did I say I gave this one 4 stars? I really enjoyed it, and I'll probably reread it in the future actually, so I might try and get my hands on a physical copy. And then I read What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall, and I gave this one 5 stars. This was incredible. So this is her first adult thriller book, so her debut. She has written YA books before, which I have read and loved, and I think she also writes middle grade as well, but I've not read those. This one is about a woman who, when she was younger, she was 11, was in the woods with her 2 friends, and she was attacked and almost killed by a serial killer. And she and her friends at the time, when they were 11, gave statements to the police, and the serial killer was arrested. When the book starts, this serial killer dies in prison of cancer, and this kind of draws the 3 of them back together again. Secrets start to come to light, and things may not have happened the way the main character said or thought they did, and they've all got a secret that they need to try to keep. So I really enjoyed this one. It was so atmospheric. I love the friendships between the women as well. It was really interesting to read about. I did admittedly figure out what was going on for the most part. There are a few things I didn't quite like call. I really enjoyed the mystery in this actually, and I thought it was really well done, and everything that happened just made sense, which I really liked. So I'm really pleased with this one. It's probably my favourite Kate Alice Marshall book so far, I think. We'll see. I'm doing a whole video on her backlist so that I can talk about all of those in more depth there. And then finally, the last book that I read in April was Lights, which is the 3rd book in a graphic novel series. The series basically follows Marjorie, whose mother died the year before, and she's dealing with a lot of grief. Her dad is also dealing with grief as well, and he's basically like non-functional, so she's having to run a business and raise her brother by herself, even though she's only a teenager. There's also a character who comes back from the ghostly realm as a ghost, and he dresses up as a sheet to sort of float around and make friends. This is a really good series. I really enjoyed it. It wrapped up really well. I gave this one 4 stars. I'm glad that it wrapped up as well as it did. I really enjoyed getting Wendell's backstory, because we got that in this one. Wendell is the ghost sheep, and all of the characters got a really good ending. So yeah, really pleased with this one, and it was lovely. So that's my April wrap up. I don't know how well I did with describing all these books because I'm on my lunch break, and to be honest, I'm a bit brain dead after this week at work, but hopefully you have some recommendations. If you're going to pick up any of these books, I would recommend picking up What Lies in the Woods because it was fantastic. But as you can see, I didn't really have any duds. There was Glow, which I only gave 2 stars, but I was expecting to rate that kind of low, so it wasn't a surprise to me. Overall, I had a really good reading month, and I hope that May is also as good. So thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know how many books you read in April in the comments below and what your favourite book was, and I will speak to you all in the next video. Bye!